All right, this video is going to go over the outbound NAT/PAT config, network address translation, port address translation that we're going to do, that we should have done at the beginning of class to get out to the richnet/internet. To configure NAT, we need to label the interfaces as inside or outside, which I've done. We need to create access lists to match our networks, which in this case I have access list 3 and access list 2 set up to match access VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. And then we need NAT commands to reference those access lists and tell it what to use for the NAT. In this case, we're using the interface IP address, and the overload keyword tells it to do port address translation. Without the overload keyword, you can only really have one source going out, so we need the overload. So before you really begin, you want to make sure everything's working by connecting out to the RichNet website. So if everything is working as it should be, you should be able to get to www.cnt.lab. DNS is slow in the simulator. I don't know why, but it takes a few minutes, not a few minutes, several seconds for it to respond. So you should do this on both of your PCs to make sure that you can get out. And once that is working, then you can continue on with the lab. I'm not going to check both because I know they're both working because I already checked them. So the first part of the lab, we are going to be doing a little different configs for our outbound network address translation. In this case, we have two lists, one for each VLAN, and two NATs, one for each VLAN. I set it up that way because that's the way you guys have done it in a previous class, but I don't really necessarily like doing it this way. It's easier to keep it straight in your head, and it's easier for you to be able to create access lists that match that. But imagine a scenario where you have 30, 40, 50 VLANs. You don't want to create 50 NAT commands. So we're going to simplify this. We're going to take a couple different steps at how we can simplify this. First thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the NAT commands that are already there and the access list. So the way we do that is by putting no in front of the command and pasting the command in. I think for access list, we can just get rid of the whole list. Yeah, so for the access list, I just did no access list 2 and no access 3, and that got rid of those. For the NATs, we need to whatever, copy and paste. I'm using my Mac that has like one big button, and I don't know how to copy and paste on that. So we'll get rid of the NAT commands. So first thing we want to do is we're going to create an access list. We're going to call it 23, and we're going to create the network in such a way that it's going to match both of our subnets. Sorry, I lied. We're going to create that access list so that we put the same stuff we had before, but instead of having two access lists, we're just going to have one. So we're going to create this same two access lists. We're going to use number 23. 23 instead of creating two separate lists. And again, this was 0000255. We'll put the other subnet on there, which we're going to put the exact subnet we're using. We skipped some space in our network because I thought that'd be fun. So now we have that access list 23. We need to create the NAT command to reference that. IPNAT inside source list 23 int gi000 overload. So that should have created the NAT we needed. We're using the outside interface and we're doing overload. So now we only have the one NAT command. So theoretically, we go test that out. We should be able to get out to the rich net, which tests with pings now. We'll just test with pings. Ping 100, 100, 100, 2. That's my DNS server out there. Let's wait for it because I know there's at least one person that's going to be annoyed that we're waiting. Okay, so that worked. The NAT is functioning. So you might be saying, Rich, why does it matter? Why do we do that? Well, one, we wanted extra practice doing that, and two, now we have one access list that covers both of our VLANs. Instead of having to have we have one access list that covers both of our VLANs, and we have one NAT command that matches that access list. So that saves us from having to create a NAT command for all the different VLANs we might be using, all the different subnets. So we're going to change that up one more time. This time we're going to get rid of the access list 23. And we're going to get rid of the NAT command we added, just because I want to use a different number. And now we're going to create access list 1. We're going to create access list 1, and we're going to create it with a single entry that covers both VLANs. So this is where our subnetting knowledge comes in. If we look at our subnets we're using for our VLANs, we're using 10.1.0.0/24 and 10.1.1.128/63. So if we figure out the range those subnets consume, it goes from 10.1.0.0 up to 10.1.1.191. So what we want to do is we want to come up with a network address wildcard mask combination that's going to cover all of those subnets, and the one that will do that is we put 10.1.1.0.0.1.255. So that's equivalent of doing that with a 23-bit mask. And if we look at the network of 10.1.0.0 with a 23-bit mask, that's going to end at 10.1.1.255. So that will include both of our subnets. So if you're confused by all that, go review your subnetting. Ask me about it in class. IP-NAT inside source list 1 int GI000 overload. So this is the most simplified NAT config. In the NAT config I recommend you have for the rest of these labs. Students sometimes do more complex NAT config and get themselves confused. But this should be what we should probably be using for the outbound NAT going forward. I'll go test and make sure it's working from both VLANs. All right, that worked. And then from my VLAN 3, all right, so that was the outbound part. One other thing I guess I probably should cover. This command's on the lab sheet. Sometimes when you are doing NAT stuff, the config doesn't get cleared. So the command show IP NAT translations will show you the active NATs, and if you want to clear those NATs. If you want to clear those NATs, you can use the command clear IP NAT translation star, and that will clear them. So that sometimes is necessary depending on how long it is between you making the NAT changes and testing them. So that's a couple other things you might need to know for the outbound NAT part of this lab.